Hey folks, it's Warren Wilson with American Cop, and we are here with our special guest, Mr. David Cagle. It's David Cagle, and he's one of my good buddies. Been around for just a minute, and we're talking today about OC spray and batons and kind of why we're not using them anymore. And I thought having a really sharp guy with a relatively short number of years on the job would be an interesting perspective. So, David, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm David Cagle. I've been working for a municipal police department in Eastern Oklahoma County for about 5 years since 2019. Started as a reserve and shortly went full time after that. I am currently on collateral duty with Oklahoma County's multi-jurisdictional SWAT team, and I'm an EMTB and some other relevant certifications like that. I've been pretty heavily into training the entire time that I've been a police officer. So even though I've only been on about 5 years now, try and train as much as I can and have some useful perspectives on that stuff.
And you've not been without influential experienced folks in your life, have you? I don't know if you want to say any names, but
Yeah, I am incredibly lucky. Before I was a police officer, I worked for Paul Howe at Combat Shooting and Tactics, so I was able to start training. I mean, when I was 17 or 18. So very lucky. I currently am on staff. I co-run Hardwired Tactical Shooting with Daryl Bulkey, and I'm also a staff instructor for Amtac Shooting, which is Bill Rapier's company.
so yeah, that's a lot of information. So really, only got 5 years on the job, but quite a few more miles than years.
Absolutely. I normally I throw this out when I teach just because you know how it is in the cop world. People don't take you seriously unless they think, you check certain boxes. So even though I've only been on for 5 years, I had a string of what I consider relatively bad luck. And in 2022, I was actually awarded the OACP's Medal of Valor for a gunfight that I was in. So some relatively high profile incidents in that time.
Yeah, and thankfully that all worked out for the best. And the only thing you got out of it was experience and knowledge,
Yes, sir.
as always. So let's talk about sticks and baton, or sticks and OC. Uh, the OC is such a useful tool, and we've seen it just collapse over the last decade or so. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But you probably got work with some guys about your age and gals. What is the aversion to that you can see?
People come out of the academy without a solid understanding of when to use it and how to apply it. So it's not a surprise that most of these people aren't going to OC and actual use of force incidents because it's not something that they're confident with. That's my take on it, anyways, from working with a lot of people. That was kind of the perspective that I had until I did Chuck Haggard's OC instructor class, which is like a PhD level education in OC spray. And that completely changed the way that I viewed it. I actually took that class with you.
Yep.
We both got seed by Chuck together.
And somehow you
But
didn't.
that kind
Somehow I'm got snot rockets and crying, and you just kind of flipped your hair and you were just cool, which I didn't
of,
appreciate at all. But yeah, that was
yeah,
a great school.
it was. And I mean, that completely changed my outlook on it because it's like anything, if people don't understand the application of something, they won't go to it. I always say that OC is kind of the less lethal version of the way that shotguns are going on the deadly force side. Everyone's moving away from them because they don't really have an appreciation of their exact application these days because we're not doing a lot of training on them. It's very similar. And so I think that is a disservice to people because I've been in several incidents where I thought that the primary officer should have deployed OC at a certain time and just didn't because, whatever the reason was for not, I personally think is just a lack of training and exposure to the right way to use it.
So I have heard. I don't tell me if you've heard this. I've heard some officers have told other officers, younger officers, "Don't you dare use that around me,"
Oh yeah.
because they didn't want
Yep.
to be exposed.
Yep.
And I've said I've tried to track those people down, but they can tell by the expression on my face that they don't want to give them up because it's not going to be pretty. I catch any of our folks doing that, I'm going to have a handful of them because you are making our folks less safe. OC properly deployed makes our folks and our public safer.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it's a hardware fix for a software problem. Instead of just training people on how to do it, they say, well, just don't use it at all. And I'm not saying that that's not a real thing. People absolutely do get friendly fire OC'd
Oh
in
yeah,
real life, uh, very much so. And I don't think the solution to that is just to stop using it. It's the same reason that we don't stop using guns because we're worried about, your partner shooting you. You
yeah.
teach your partner how to not shoot you if they don't want to. Like
Great
it's
point. Yeah, and that little bit of exposure, it will not kill you. Believe me, it's a little bit
no.
uncomfortable, but truly, unless you're using a cone fog in a room, which I have done, and it's not fun, but it's easy to get them into custody that way. I saw
Yeah.
one just a while back, and I don't want to bring up the specifics, but bad guys in a car, you got two officers on the outside of the car. In order to tase somebody inside a car, you have to either open the door or either get in the window. So they're fighting with him with the door, pull out the magic electrical pistol, tase the guy. As soon as the 5 seconds is up, he ends up shooting the cop and killing him. To me, that
Yeah.
would be a great place to dust him up with some OC and say, "Have a nice day." And I've heard people argue, "Well, what if he drives off like that?" What's the first thing that happens when your window fogs up? What do you do when you're driving? Just without even thinking about it, you stop. If you can't see, you're not going to drive. Just ain't done.
Yeah.
And that cop wouldn't have got killed.
Yep. We had, luckily ours turned out better than that, but we had an almost identical incident where a dude was off duty security. He was working an off duty gig at Walmart, but it was uniformed, and he ended up tasing a dude that he thought was just a shoplifter. Well, it turns out dude was a little more hardcore than your regular shoplifter, and as soon as 5 seconds was over, same thing. He drew and shot at the guy. Luckily he missed. But that's the problem with the taser is if almost every cop has been tased. And so you know that it sucks for 5 seconds. And then as soon as it's over, it's over. I always say I would rather get tased 10 times than get OC'd because when you get OC'd, it sucks for like an hour and a half. Like it
I
doesn't.
was gonna share my decon with you that day, but you recovered too fast, and I was very resentful of it, so I didn't let you have it. But they do have some good stuff that I keep with me that helps you decon a little bit faster, and I save that for our guys and whatever because it's my own money.
I've got some in my unit.
It's good
But
stuff.
that's one of those things, you brought up a good point. You have to have realistic expectations for OC. And so that's one of the things that I hear a lot is cops go, well, I've been OC'd and you can fight through it. Well, yes, you can fight through, you can fight through anything. That doesn't mean I want it to happen to me when I'm going to fight. But the OC is an eye poke in a can. It's a
Yeah,
great way to start a fight. And if you're legally justified in using it, just like I would rather fight a drunk guy than I'd rather fight a sober guy if I have to, I would much rather fight a guy who's just been OC'd unexpectedly.
yep. And
Like
that's part of the
when
key to it.
cops do the counter assault course or whatever in their training where they get OC'd, they're sitting there for, an hour before, like prepping, like, okay, I'm
Yep.
about to get OC'd, let's do this,
Or all
all
day.
that. Yeah. And so it's different than a dude, knife handing verbally getting riled up, and then boom, suddenly that guy out of nowhere has been OC'd in the face and is not expecting it at all. That is a
Exactly.
very different reaction.
That's
And
exactly right. Exactly right. And you still have the spasmodically closed eyes. When you get
right.
it in the right spot, the eye is going to close. And if you don't train to do that, you're probably not going to do it. I've never seen anybody do it. So
Well,
it's a
and
good tool, and we're missing out.
yeah, and by the time somebody has adjusted, if your DT is solid enough, they should already be on the ground and be cuffed, basically. By the time they figured out what's going on, the whole thing should be over. It's
That should
not like
be,
fight
yep,
last, minutes, like it's the UFC or something. Like
should be an
get him out.
arm bar, or a sit out, or some way to get him on the ground, get him in
Exactly.
handcuffs, and then you can start babying him and being their papa and get him some cold water and see it's going to be okay. And your
Yep.
other officers, if they got a little on them too, some of them are kind of fragile. So You may have to keep the decon for them. So I've tried to have a sense of humor about it, but it's really frustrating to me that we're losing that great tool, and there's so many cops that are being killed just because they're not using good tools. You know, you don't really have to
Yeah.
get in a fight with somebody.
Right.
You can if the taser doesn't work, and it's not always going to work, even the really good ones. We got taser 10s. Jump through a bunch of hoops. Our city council was fantastic about it. Imagine raising a line item from 15,000 to 70 something thousand a year. Imagine how well that
Yep.
would go over in a relatively small town. You know, that's a lot of money. They just did it right away. That's great. But it's a small thing. It's this much of this much. And some of it is actually getting your hands on people and getting in there and doing stuff. And that's another hard thing we have. Cops don't want to go hands on anymore as much. And if you don't have
Exactly.
those physical skills, then I get it. But why do you not have those physical skills? Can you not find it somewhere?
Nothing is going to work if you don't have the physical skills to back it up, which is the problem. You can't use that to justify stuff because nothing's going to work. If you could have a perfect taser deployment, and then after 5 seconds, if you don't have them wrapped up, the whole process starts over again. So I always say, like, teaching cops how to actually fight should be priority number one,
Absolutely.
before we even all of that stuff. And I know you agree with all that, but going back to another thing you said, I think the money issue is a serious thing because I work for a smaller department. All of the smaller departments around me, they can't. We were lucky. We got the taser taser sevens like right when they came out, and we've kind of upgraded, as things have gone along. But a lot of the departments around have not, and especially ones that like have reserves and things like that. Like everyone's not going to have a taser, but absolutely every single officer on the street can have OC spray.
Yep.
Like even if you have to buy it yourself. Like I bought a 3-pack of the Mark III palm cans for like $40 the other day.
Yep.
Like
And super cheap.
anybody can do that. Yeah.
Super cheap.
So
Compared to a taser. And I've always had way better luck with OC than I have taser. Always. Consistently.
oh,
But
I
I
have
knew how to
to.
use it. I surprised him with it.
I Yeah. Well, and it's hard to because a lot of guys use the taser as like a psychological deterrent. They're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna tase you,
The
which
Ubi.
I don't know if that's always the way to do it, but almost every time I've ever used OC spray, it went from nothing to OC draw, and using it's a surprise. So having kind of the ambush tactic for its deployment,
Yep.
I think is better in a lot of situations.
And it is so incredibly safe. The only thing that's safer, from what I can tell, is actual properly applied neck restraints. And goodness, let's not talk about that. The fainting couch is too far away. I'll fall and hit the ground. But how about batons now? Or do you have anything else to say about OC?
No, that's about it. It's relatively simple to express all my opinions about that. Not exactly easy to implement them. I think if you train guys more on them and they understood the use of them, they would use them more. And that's the long and the short of it, basically.
Yeah, and we're doing a ton of training on it. I got a guy who is all about it, and we're working real hard on it, but we're still not seeing the deployments yet.
Yeah, and
I just want everybody to be okay, you know. So we're trying to give them every tool we can. So what about baton? Now that's something that you hardly ever see.
yeah, the baton stuff. I actually just had a conversation with Chuck about batons as well.
He knows a little bit about that
So
stuff too.
yeah, the baton is another thing that you have your little check the box training in the academy, and then the only thing people end up using them for is breaking windows. Uh, uh, that's been my experience, anyways. I don't think I've ever seen anyone actually use one uh, the way they're intended as a use of force tool. And I think there's a lot of reasons why, but like with me specifically, so when I grew up when I was a teenager, I got pretty heavily into the Filipino martial arts, which is all stick fighting stuff. But if you take any of that training and try and use it with a baton, it's instantly lethal force, and you're going to prison because they just teach you to hit people in the head with it in various creative ways. So it's not exactly like firearms where you can go take like, more sports side approach. Like if you go shoot IDPA or USPSA or something, the physical skills of how you actually shoot the gun translates pretty well. And with like the martial arts side of how most people use batons and things like that, and anything like Kali, Krav Maga, like any of these arts that have like stick fighting curriculum, it does not translate to the police world at all, and you will absolutely go to prison if you try and do it like that. So there's really not a way to train the law enforcement use of the baton outside of law enforcement specific classes. And again, we aren't giving law enforcement specific classes that are quality and actually instill confidence in the tool.
And
So,
that's what I don't have a lot of
because
experience
there's all
outside of
kinds
our
of
own
awesome
academy.
stuff you can do with the baton,
Oh yeah.
And I think it's a very underrated thing. Because guys just have no idea on them. If you pull out your baton in the middle of a fight against a super determined dude and you whack him in the thigh 30 times, the next day he will have a really nasty bruise on his leg. And you probably will not see any actual effect during the use of force incident itself. So, especially because everyone is carrying the collapsible like ASP batons,
The
which do not
trifold.
work nearly as well as a straight stick or
I'm coming up with a colorful way to talk about the trifold batons. And it's gonna have something to do with oozing, burning restaurant garbage, something like that.
yeah.
Because they killed it. I actually took one of those to the academy, and Vince O'Neill himself walked up to all of us who had ASP and said, "When you get done here, you're going to take that home and sell it to somebody or throw it away." And he was right. And I ended up with the Monadnock that I've still got. It's a 24-inch Monadnock bifold, and all the weight is in the striking end.
Yeah,
And that one works.
exactly. And that's the exact thing I'm talking about. Is most cops have never been exposed to that, so they don't even know that kind of option is out there, because like universally every cop just sees like your ASP expandable and they think that's what it is. All of the baton trainers are still like the old in Letzi style straight stick trainers. So you train with something that is completely different than what you're actually using. And I think that is a huge problem, obviously. But I also think you need more than an hour of, have it behind your head, do a straight forehand whack on a dude's thigh, and that's all you need to know. Uh,
No,
Not
I
good.
got a good feeling about the way our guys are doing it. I shouldn't say his name. Guy from over at Guthrie. That's a high level DT guy. You probably know who I'm talking about. He went to SWAT school with him years ago, and he came over and was helping with our academy DT. And then we got another guy with OHP who's super high level, and they've done stuff outside of just the cleat stuff, and nothing against it because I have no reason to believe it's anything but great. Because when I went through, I come out walking about. I was about 10 foot tall when I come out of cleat. I was walking tall. I mean, I was confident I could use the stuff. It was great. So I got no beef against that. But the more we can get, the better. And there's a lot of cool stuff out there. And this guy I'm talking about from Guthrie and OHP, they come in and help our guy. And we got a new guy now that just went through DT successfully. So now they're getting that experience from those two guys too. And I go back there and watch them, and they're doing well. They should be able to use those sticks well, but I don't know how to change the culture. I think that's what I'm
Well,
afraid we're talking about is a culture problem.
it is a culture problem. That's where I was going to go with that next is if you look at the culture is really breeded by your instructors. So that's who is going to basically instill your original opinions when you get out of whatever training is whatever your instructors teach you. That is obviously going to impact how you feel about things. And when you have a bunch of instructors who have been through like the ASP baton instructor class, which is the standard one everyone goes to, big dude in the red man suit at the end of 3 days, and you whack him in like the arm and the thigh a bunch. That is what I would say the vast majority. To make another firearms analogy, it's like the NRA instructor class of DT. is the ASP baton instructor course. You just don't have an appreciation for what they can do if that's the only thing you've ever done. So I think if we could get instructors going through like the National Law Enforcement Training Center's baton class, it would completely change the way that that's trained. And so if you don't have instructors that are passionate about a tool, you're not going to get students who are passionate about a tool, because that's not going to get transferred to them.
Yeah.
Right. They have 40 hours to take a bunch of people who have never been in a physical fight in their entire lives, have no martial arts background. A lot of them have no contact sports background. And they're like, okay, well, in 40 hours, you are going to teach this person how to completely fight and not die.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't do either of those twice that time.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going with that.
Especially if you go in baton, OC, handcuffing, and all of just the open hand defensive tactics techniques, it is an insane, like, weapon retention, like the amount of things that they cannot take out that they have to include in 40 hours is completely insane.
No,
So
they put too much pressure on
I
those
make a
guys
lot
to
of
get it done fast, and then we wonder why it's not as good as we want it to be. When I went, it was 324 hours. But Vince got his money's worth out of us because
exactly.
we didn't leave there until 7 o'clock at night. Well, you wouldn't be able to get away with that nowadays because they'd be talking about FLSA and having to pay overtime and all that. You'd never get away with that now.
Yeah,
So
the Vincent era is definitely a thing of the past, unfortunately, which
yeah,
I'm sad.
and that I
But
will 100% blame chiefs and sheriffs for that. But thankfully, the legislature has pushed it up. I mean, it's up to 600 hours, which is a lot better.
yeah,
But these guys still need more. They need more. So one thing I was going to bring up about sticks real quick that I don't think folks know is a possible thing. You got somebody down and they're doing the old face down, you can't have my arm thing.
yeah.
You
I was
bet I
going to mention,
can't do that with an ASP baton with a trifold,
right?
but you can sure as heck do that with a good stick, and you can pry their arm right out of there, and they cannot stop you, and you're not hurting them doing it. Instead
No.
of doing strikes, doing strikes on the shoulder, or now they'd be a good place for OC as well, but that really won't help their arm come out. It'll just mean they can't fight you when they get up. But you can
Well,
do so much stuff. You can keep distance with it, keep somebody back
and
from you.
you can do some awesome stuff. Like, I personally think that PPCT, the old pressure point control tactics, is probably the worst thing to happen to American law enforcement DT training ever. But there are certain PPCT things that work super well
Yep.
if you use a baton for it. Like when somebody's proned out and they got their hands up under them, there are ways to get them to force their arms out that work super well with a baton that don't work when you're just doing it open-handed. So there's a lot of like little application things like that I think are getting completely lost.
Absolutely. And that is a great place to end. So, David, do you have anything you want to plug? We're going into American Cop, so Brother Gelhaus is going to let us have some leeway on probably on what he lets us, what he lets you plug, and he's probably a big fan of all the stuff you do anyway. So, got anything you want to talk about?
I am I'm thinking probably the biggest thing as far as hit stuff goes. I don't have anything immediate that I'm teaching, but speaking of Brother Gelhaus, Daryl Bolke, Mark Fricky, Greg Ellifritz, Gelhaus, all of the usual suspects are teaching shotgun stuff at the Thunderstick Summit in Utah I think it's like October 10th to the 12th. And I somehow managed to reference shotguns like 7 times in our baton and OC talk. So
That
you
one's
can
pretty
tell
good though.
but that's probably the biggest hits event that's coming up. I'm going to be getting more of my classes. I just taught shotgun for Amtech shooting, and I'm going to get more of those on the schedule. So the main thing I'm teaching right now is I'm teaching some medical classes around with Heartland Medical Direction, which is a great group of people. But I mean, nothing specific to plug at the moment. So just be on the lookout for updates from our Facebook page.
That'll be yeah. It's spell that for everybody that hits isn't like you think.
It's well,
Hardwired.
the abbreviation is big H, little I, big T, big S. So it's hits,
Hardwired
but
tactical.
yeah, hardwired tactical shooting. If you just look up hardwired tactical shooting, that's what the Facebook page is. Cape Buffalo blue background is our profile picture. So easy to find.
And that's really good stuff coming out of that organization and really anything you're involved in. And it's been super exciting getting to meet you back then. And I'm really excited to see where you go, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. It's an honor. Always good to talk to you, brother.
Hey, bro, have a good one. Be safe. Folks, hope you got something out of it. Be looking for David Cagle. He's going to be somebody.